Was there a moment, an aha moment in any of the primary materials you studied?
My primary source was actually his best friend, Carl Schneeder. He was one of the Mormon kid. They attended the same branch there in Hamburg.
Really?
Right. He and I became friends when he was in his mid to late 70s. Germany was just dominating on every front in every possible way.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. That was just us being cool.
Okay.
And Carl, he was the only Jewish member in the branch.
So that was all historically accurate and not just something you guys took creative license in.
That is epic. That is cool.
I'm so intrigued with the power of the spoken word. If we had any doubt, you wouldn't be leaving here alive. He said, but remember this. Once we have solved the Jewish problem, you Mormons are next.
No, get out of town. Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Go and Do Travel's 2025 Wave Makers LDS Podcaster Cruise, going down between November 15th and November 22nd. If you guys want to hang out with some of the coolest podcasters in the game, make sure that you guys go to goanddotravel.com and use promo code WARDRadio10 to receive 10% off your ticket. Now back to the program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Ward Radio. I'm your host, Cardin Ellis, and today I'm joined in the studio, back by popular demand, none other than Matt Whitaker here, who is the director of this film, Truth and Treason. It's the story of a young Mormon boy that defied Hitler, was, correct me if I'm wrong here, Matt, the youngest man tortured by the Third Reich. They had to change the rules just to torture him and get information out of him, right?
No, they were torturing people. Pretty indiscriminately, but he was the youngest resistance fighter to be sentenced to death and executed by the Nazis.
Okay, in their infamous People's Court, kind of like the I don't remember the exact translation, but the kangaroo court that Hitler had.
Yeah, the
right?
Volksgerichtshof, yes, the People's Court.
Wow, are you?
That's like the only German word I know.
Oh, I was about to say that was totally believable, my man.
What does that say about me? That the only German word I know is the People's Court.
Yeah. So something I totally loved about the movie was just you actually brought a little prop right here. I see it right next to you, and it's pretty cool. Do I understand? That's the actual radio that Helmut Hübener, who's the young man, listened to the BBC and the French radio broadcast. Now, in the movie, it wasn't totally clear. I know some of it was English, and I've read some books on him and so on and so forth. But what was he listening to? And I know he typed on the typewriter, but in the movie, you just have everything has to happen so fast.
Right. Yeah. We kind of have to condense a lot of things that happen. So
what's the real raw deal? How did he actually start? I mean, I don't want to say being radicalized because that has a negative connotation. He did such a good thing, right? But how did he find this radio and then just start realizing that everything the Nazis were saying about the war was fake, and then getting that information out to others? What was that process? And tell me about that radio. Yeah.
So in early 41, his older brother Gerhard, who was serving in Hitler's army, he was a German soldier serving in France. And he came home on furlough, and he had brought home with him a black market, a radio, a ham or a shortwave radio, not a ham radio, but a shortwave radio.
Really?
That was, of course, illegal in Nazi Germany, and but he snuck it home, and then one night showed Helmut, hey, look what I've got, and you can get music from America here. You can get the BBC, all these banned things in Nazi Germany, and then his brother brought the radio home and then went back to war. And Helmut had this radio. It had broken, and he fixed it. he got into it, repaired it, and then turned it on. And he actually tuned into the BBC. So during the war, the BBC was broadcasting in the German language on shortwave.
Okay, I was about to say, how do you understand that? Okay, so it was in the German language.
Yeah, they were broadcasting in the German language, knowing that there were a lot of underground Germans in Nazi Germany who had these illegal shortwave radios and who were listening to them, and so they were broadcasting the truth as opposed to what the people would get on the People's Radio, listening to Goebbels and what he was, the propaganda that he was giving on the radio that most Germans could legally get access to.
Okay, so here's my question. I don't want to be too techie about this, but it seems like, was Goebbels and the Nazis allowed to broadcast on AM radio? Because I know it was a big deal. Shortwave travels long distances.
Right.
And so from what I understand, or what I gleaned from the movie, and tell me if I'm wrong, was like shortwave radios were outlawed. But obviously they were getting their regular propaganda from what, like AM radio? There was no FM back then. So.
Right, that's right. It was. It's a good question. Technically, I don't know if it was AM, but it was. It was what they called the People's Radio. It was specially built by the Nazis to only. It had a very, very narrow frequency, very narrow access. You could only get very, very local broadcasts. So you could get something from Berlin, barely, in the People's Radio if you lived up in Hamburg, which was 2.5 hours away. So
they manufactured their own radio.
Yes, that had very, very limited and specific capacities to really only be able to get something that was broadcast by Goebbels and the Nazi propaganda machine.
Wow, I never knew that, but I'm looking at this. Oh my goodness gracious, look at this. It's right here on Wikipedia. It's called well, you're the guy that can pronounce all these words well. The Volksempfänger?
Yeah, the Volksempfänger, yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious.
All my German-speaking friends are laughing at me, but the Volksempfänger, I think is something like that. The People's Radio, yeah.
Yeah, look at this thing. It was a distinctive Bakelite cabinet designed by the architect and industrial designer Walter Maria Kersting. Oh my goodness gracious, here it is. Oh, this is absolutely intriguing. So you were only allowed to receive certain signals, which, by the way, that's something we don't really realize being Americans, because it's so completely foreign to us.
Yeah.
This idea of having like speech regulated, like the First Amendment is just bedrock in our society. No matter what people want to say, you can't regulate American speech. You can try. They tried during COVID, but like nothing, you can't stop it, right? Yeah. But in other places, they actually do quite effectively. Like my buddies that served in Russia have all but lost contact with some of their most beloved people since that war in Ukraine started and Putin started just clamping down. Like they control the entire internet there. Good luck in America.
Say something that's interesting is that, we talk about the BBC that was broadcasting by shortwave in German and in other foreign languages during World War II. They continued that for a while after the war, and then they stopped doing it. They started doing it again February 22nd of 2022. They started broadcasting in the Russian language on shortwave again.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously...
you know what that date that was? That was the date that Putin invaded the Ukraine. So that's what I'm saying is that the BBC began once again, as they did during World War II, which gave Helmut access to the truth. The BBC once again, in February of 2022, after Putin invaded Ukraine, the BBC once again began broadcasting in the Russian language over shortwave.
Oh, dude, that is so cool. Yeah. And we as Americans, we don't understand shortwave radio. Yeah. Because basically it existed only pre-war, and there was a lot of immigrant families that could hear the old Radio Berlin. They could hear the old, not Radio Berlin, there was Radio España, I think it was called. But then they could hear Radio Berlin. They could hear, if they were from Austria, they could hear the Austrian radio. If they were from Sweden, they could hear Swedish radio. If they're Italian, they could hear Italian radio. Yeah. But once the war started, the American government saw how effective shortwave was in our outward propaganda, that they didn't want people propagandized within the United States of America. And FM radio was such a good technological advancement in sound quality that they basically put pressure on the manufacturers to only put in AM, FM. And that's why when we have a radio, it's AM, FM radio. But there's still 3 shortwave radio broadcasting stations in America. Really? Have you ever seen what the antennas look like?
No.
Oh, bro. Okay. Describe the antenna on your car to our audience. What's it look like?
On my current car?
Yeah.
It's just looks like a shark fin.
Okay. Okay. So you got a modern car. Yeah. But even when you were a kid, there was like, So if I look up a shortwave broadcast radio antenna right now, what size do you think it is?
It's got to be tall, man.
Okay. This right here is a shortwave broadcast radio assembly, and that's the shack underneath it. That right there, oh, whoops, you can't see it on your screen. That right there is a shortwave, and
that's cool.
That's a little shack. Those are telephone poles, bro. Look at that. Those are telephone poles next to it.
Yeah.
That is massive. The amount of juice it takes. You can take a hot dog and you can stick it on a string and ground it. And then like there's videos of people like with isolated like sticks just touching a hot dog, and you can hear the sound coming through. You've never seen that before?
No.
Oh, bro, Matt. Okay, this is Ward Radio. We're talking about fun Ward Radio stuff. I can't believe. Look,
We're talking about hot dogs on shortwave radio antennas.
we're talking hot dogs on shortwave radio. So look at this. Hot dog AM radio antenna, which is basically almost the same as shortwave. Look at this. We made a hot dog talk with AM radio. Here's a video. This is so rad, dude. You're going to like totally dig this. So they literally put a hot dog on a stick and then jumper cables attached to the AM radio antenna, right? And then you're going to see what happens when it touches the actual antenna. This is how much power these things have.
This is why you don't want to touch an AM tower and ground yourself.
So there it is on the copper wiring.
Okay. Well, never done anything like this before.
Requires that
See how you can hear the sound?
Okay, but we can hear it.
requires that.
And they're like, so you can hear so there's so much juice going into this tower to propagate the signal. And this is AM radio, which isn't even as intense as shortwave radio. Shortwave radio requires so much juice. These things are using up like 50,000, 80,000 watts just simultaneously to broadcast that signal literally over the world. They bounce the signals off the ionosphere.
Yeah.
That's how it gets all the way there. So anyway, I'm sorry. I went into this stupid laborious technological description, but yeah, that's intriguing. So he's listening to German-spoken BBC radio.
That's right.
And you've got the actual prop from the movie right there, right?
Yeah, this is the prop, not the actual radio that Helmut used,
Okay.
which was destroyed. But this is the prop that we actually shot with in Lithuania when we were filming, as a period shortwave radio that he would something like he would have used. And so for the first time, having been raised, he was born in 1925.
Okay, cool.
So, Hitler comes into power in 1933. He's 8 years old. So really his whole, it's for the last 8 years of his life, he's only known what Hitler and what Goebbels wanted him to know. And so for the first time, he's tuning into the BBC. He's hearing news that's very different than what he's been hearing on the People's Radio. And he's just intuitively realizing this is the truth. I can tell they're telling the truth. And for him, it was eye-opening and life-changing.
Does he have any indication what inkling made him realize that's not just their propaganda and lies, that ours is propaganda and lies? Was there a moment, an aha moment in any of the primary materials you studied?
Well, so my primary source was actually his best friend, Carl Schnibe. So Carl was another Mormon kid. They attended the same branch there in Hamburg.
Really?
And they were best friends. And Carl was the last surviving member of Helmut Hübener's resistance group. He and I became friends when he was in his mid to late 70s. And what Carl told me is that what Helmut had told him is that, when they listened to Goebbels talk about how well the war was going, it was just all positive. Everything, just Germany was just dominating on every front in every possible way. And then Helmut starts listening to these BBC broadcasts, and the British broadcasts were telling things like, well, here we won, but here's where our troops lost. And he was realizing they're giving a much more nuanced, a much more truthful report of how war actually happens, and for him to kind of get that, to distinguish between, this is what the truth sounds like, and it was very clearly very different from the everything's always great, nothing is ever wrong, Germany will win and will always win, that kind of thing that he was hearing on the People's Radio.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. So then, so keep going with the story. Was there anything, in the movie, it's pretty simple. He gets the radio, he starts realizing that, we're being lied to by the Nazis. And then he starts basically translating or transcribing what he hears on the radio into leaflets, and then just distributing them as much as he could around town.
Yeah.
2 questions.
Yeah.
Was there any indication that his older brother that got him the radio was anti-Nazi and of the same heart and mind, and that's why he gave it to him? Or was it just kind of an interesting trinket, like, hey, look, I know this is kind of bootleg, but you can hear great music from, Chicago. Like, what was it?
So I actually had the privilege of meeting his older brother, Gerhard, before he passed away.
Really?
And being able to talk to him about his younger brother, but also just about this fact that he's the one who brought the radio home. Gerhard was not a fan of Adolf Hitler either, but the impression that I got is that he brought this home as something. It was just something exciting and mysterious.
It's something cool, yeah.
Right? And it was his little brother Helmut who really kind of nailed it down to, there's truth here. There's information here that I can't get from the People's Radio or from any other kind of approved material that he had access to in Nazi Germany. There were 2 other things though that were happening kind of at the same time.
Okay, yeah.
One is that he had a job. He had an intern basically. He was on an internship working at City Hall and working for the Nazis. Where they had a banned book room, basically.
Yeah, I saw that in the movie.
Okay.
Good job with the little red slips.
Yeah.
Was that historically accurate, or was that just you being cool?
That was just us being cool.
Okay.
He did write his leaflets. What we know is that his first leaflets were on little red pieces of paper, and we know that he got that paper from his work. And so we took those bits of
So it was
facts.
historically accurate.
We just don't know if they were all there in the banned book room.
Okay. No. Okay. Yeah. Well, that was creative. Yeah. I dig that. Dig that. Okay.
So he had access to banned books and Carl talked to me about that. The fact that he was borrowing those and reading them and reading things again that he wasn't supposed to be reading, and began kind of incorporating that into his worldview, which was evolving and opening up. The other thing that happened around the same time was their friend Salomon Schwartz, who was Jewish but had joined the church and was a faithful member of their branch there in Hamburg, and things really kind of came to a head for Helmut and for others when the branch president, in the film we call him the bishop, but the branch president put a sign up on the door that said Jews are not allowed to enter, and Carl shared with me he remembers seeing Salomon standing outside just weeping.
Really?
Yeah, he was the only Jewish member in the branch, and so
that was all historically accurate and not just something you guys took creative license into.
That's correct. And so as these things now, again, we condensed some things and conflated some things to kind of get it all into a 2-hour movie, right?
Yeah, of course.
But those events, the truth that he was getting from the BBC, the information that he was getting from these banned books from his work, and then really kind of the final straw, his Jewish friend Salomon, this member of their branch, who was first, not allowed to come to church anymore, and then shortly thereafter was taken and eventually ended up in Auschwitz, where he was murdered.
Really?
Yeah. So when Salomon disappeared, it wasn't long after that Helmut started, at some point made a decision, I have to do something. He wasn't a gun owner. He didn't have a gun. Yeah. He was a brilliant young 16-year-old. He was a brilliant writer, and he had a typewriter. He had access to a typewriter. He was the assistant ward clerk, basically, or branch clerk at church. One of his jobs was to type letters to the soldiers that were serving from the branch, and to just keep them updated on what was happening in the branch. And he worked closely with their branch president, Arthur Zander, a wonderful branch president, and also a member of the Nazi Party, and who was the man who, the branch president, who put that sign on the door, Jews are not allowed to enter. So Helmut is working closely with him. And when all of these things kind of came together with the information he was getting from the BBC, the information he's getting from these banned books, and then when Salomon was taken, he decided he would would do something. He borrowed the typewriter from the ranch, and at night at his home began typing up anti-Hitler, anti-Nazi leaflets, pulling from BBC broadcasts, pulling from books that he was reading, but also pulling from his own mind. The ideas that he was forming. If you read these leaflets and think that they were written by a 16-year-old kid, it's just incredible.
Yeah, so my last question is, I know how bishops in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are with their congregations. Very tightly knit.
Yes.
They take that shepherd and sheep adage very, very well. They're closely tied to the young men, pastoring them, nurturing them, making sure they grow up from being just, boys into men and so on and so forth. So in all of your primary source study for this film, the bishop had to have known that one of those boys in his congregation was Jewish.
Yes.
When he made that sign, did that tear him up inside? Was he just so ideologically motivated it didn't? Like what went through his head? Were you able to glean any of that information, or is it just you don't know?
Short answer is I don't know, but I was able to glean some information.
Okay.
I met with, he had 3 sons. I met all 3 of them and have spoken to them about their father. I've spoken to as many living members even 20 years ago of that branch who were still alive, who knew him personally. Without exception, they all said this was a very good man. Arthur Sonder was a very good man. Yes. And so why he put that sign on the door, we don't know exactly. Were there anti-Semitic feelings that he held and that were very, very common, by the way, throughout Nazi Germany and throughout the United States at that time.
Oh, yeah, dude. Nobody's bloodless in this.
That's exactly right. So it's really easy, I think, to look back and
during
say,
the Civil War, we outlawed them.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, people skip over that. They don't realize it. There was like a 2-month period. Like, there's been like one time we did it in the 30s, one time we did it in the 1860s. Yeah, it's nobody's hands are clean of that.
But what his motivation was, we also know, and his sons, told me this, that he knew he would see when the Gestapo would drop by church and sit in the back and look at this American church, and try and see how faithful they were. They felt, his family and those that knew him felt strongly that some of the tough decisions that he made, some of the things for which he's been judged,
were protecting his congregation,
were protecting his flock.
Hey guys, we're going to press pause just for 1 second to thank a sponsor, none other than scripturenotes.com, the coolest way to read your guys' scriptures online. If you guys want to receive a small discount on Scripture Notes, you can actually use the code WARDRADIO and you'll get a 14-day free trial to Scripture Notes. Totally worth it, totally awesome. I use it in every episode. Now, back to the episode. Do you feel that way in your study?
Yeah, but I would say it's nuanced. I would say that he was definitely, his decision, what he did, probably did save their lives, or may have very, very well saved the members of the church, at least in Hamburg. But at the same time, people who knew him personally would say he was a devout Nazi. He believed in it. He had bought into what he'd been taught. There were some members of the church who looked at similarities between Adolf Hitler and would kind of draw these conclusions or these comparisons that make us uncomfortable today. But they would, Hitler instituted what they called a one-pot Sunday. So once a month, they would skip 2 meals, and then whatever money they saved, they would, in theory, donate to the poor.
Just like fast offerings.
Hitler didn't smoke. He didn't drink. He encouraged people not to.
A lot of people don't realize he was kind of perceived as a little bit of a health guru in the very beginning.
Right. So,
and he took oxycodone,
I think.
Oxycodone, and would brag that I experience these difficult trials and I don't even feel it. Now we're like, holy crap, he was a drug addict and we didn't even realize it. Yeah.
But to my point, there were members of the church, not all of them, but there were some who saw that as, oh, he's like us. He's really interested in genealogy for a very, very dark and sinister reason, of course. But they would make these comparisons. I don't know if how much of that the branch president was doing, but I do know that by everybody who knew him personally that I've spoken with, without exception, they said, he was a good man. It's easy for us to look back and judge him now. But what would we have done in that situation?
Wow. And to think it all started with a radio. So where'd you get that one? That one's the prop in the movie, right?
Yeah, this is the prop in the movie.
Is that actually a 1940s? Because the real one was a Royola or whatever?
Rolla was the brand that it was. Yeah, ROLA was the brand. I only know that because Carl told me that's what it was. Again, the radio that was used was lost, but Carl, he was huddled. Eventually Helmut started by himself, writing typing up these leaflets, and he would go out by himself on the streets of Hamburg at night and put them up. And then he eventually recruited a couple of his friends from church, Karl-Heinz Schnibe and Rudy Voba. Rudy was 15, Carl was 17. And so Carl, would talk to me about being huddled around the radio with Helmut, and quietly at night listening to these things and then talking about it. And then Helmut would type these things up. They eventually started sneaking into the church at night because it had a mimeograph machine, and cranking out copies of it that way, and then putting them out.
Wait, so Helmut Hübener snuck into the Mormon church in order to bootleg copies of his newsletter off of the church's mimeograph machine?
Yes. Yeah, he did.
That is epic. Okay. Yeah. And how was that finally figured out? In the movie, I know you said that they actually found a leaflet on the floor, but is that what happened?
It could have. That's something, again, that we're not sure exactly how much was known by the branch president, and if he actually found those. That may have been a little bit of a creative license that we took to have him conveniently find that
wow.
One that was left behind, but we know that they were cranking them out there and using them, and it's a pretty heady stuff.
Just think, this whole rebellion all just started with a radio. Just like, that is cool.
I'll tell you what, I'm so intrigued with the power of the spoken word. I'm so intrigued with the power of words. As a writer, I'm just, the power of the words, the power of a peaceful resistance using words. That's a phrase that's been ringing out in my mind just over in the last several days, is words, not guns. There's a scene in the film where Helmut is recruiting Carl and Rudy and trying to explain what he's doing, and he shows them these red leaflets that he holds up, and he says, "We can change things, not with guns, but with these." Again, just the power of the word, the power of the written word, just the power of a peaceful resistance.
Wow, that is crazy. Now, last question before we go, because unfortunately we're going to have to jam here. We got a hard out coming up. Is there anything that you wish could have made it into the movie because it was so good but didn't? You know that phrase, "kill your darlings"?
Oh, man, yeah.
They say that when they're, when you're writing a script. For those of you that never heard the phrase before, scripts can only be 90 pages long, and you might have 10 different stories that you want to string along, but there may only be room for 8 of them. And 1 or 2 of them you may really love, and you want them in there, but you have to sacrifice them either for the length of the film or for the quality of the joke or the story arc or for whatever reason. So as a creative writer, you have to learn to, quote, "kill your darlings." And it's kind of like a way of taking humble pie and saying, okay, I want this in there, but for the good of the project, I'm going to take it out. But some of those darlings, when they go, they really are darling. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So were there any darlings you had to kill in this script that didn't make it in the movie that you're kind of like, that would have been cool?
So it's an interesting question because we actually shot a 4-part limited series. So essentially 4 hours of content.
Okay.
After we shot that, our distributor said, "We got to get this in theaters. This is too good. Is there a 2-hour version of this?" I said, "I don't know. Well, let's see." So that's when we started killing darlings.
Oh,
started
really?
Backing ourselves into, and then found a really powerful 2-hour version of this story, but knowing that there's so much diving deeper into the branch president's family and his decision process, diving deeper into the Gestapo agent and his family, and what it was like, on his side of things. All of those things, which are in the 2-hour version to a certain extent. Okay. I think it's really, if you don't know what you're missing, it's great. But luckily, our distributor is also releasing the 4-hour extended
By the way, you can
series,
say
so-
it. It's Angel Studios,
Angel
right?
Studios, yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So
Well, talk to me. Oh my goodness gracious, this is so intriguing. Talk to me really fast before we jam about the Gestapo, because the B.H. Roberts Foundation just got a hold of all of the Gestapo's, not underground, but like previously classified information on what they thought about Mormons.
Yeah.
Because yes, we know that they persecuted the Jews. Yes, we know they went after like Jehovah's Witnesses, other religious minorities, ethnic minorities, gypsies, so on and so forth. I mean, forget like, black people and Middle Easterners, like goodbye. But with members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that didn't have like an ethnic marker, that they were indeed ethnically German, but were still part of a different faith. I know James E. Tallinge's book, Jesus the Christ, was on the banned list, correct?
was it? I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
I think Jesus, it was the Articles of Faith. Sorry,
Okay,
not
maybe the
Jesus
Articles of
Christ.
Faith.
Yeah, it was
Interesting.
James E. Tallinge's, the Articles of Faith, and I don't know if the Book of Mormon specifically was or
I
not.
don't think that it was. I've read some of the notes from the Gestapo about that, and they reference the Book of Mormon. There's intrigue or curiosity about what it is, but I don't think that it was ever officially banned. Interestingly.
Really? Okay. So talk to me about the Gestapo. Like, what did they think of the church back then?
Yeah, they really viewed it as an American church, and so they really saw it. And so since we were, weren't officially at war yet, but America was not seen as an ally to the Nazis. They were already seen as the enemy, and so they were the Gestapo were spying on and just dropping in and keeping files on leaders of the church in Nazi Germany. And they all the members of the church knew this, especially the leaders of the church. That they knew this. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, if I can just share one.
No,
brief
hit it.
experience.
Yeah, tell me.
So after Helmut was arrested, was caught by the Gestapo.
Yeah.
They looked at the branch president and they said, okay, he's obviously a party man, so we don't think it's him. But there was one of his counselors in the branch presidency, a man named Otto Berndt, who did have anti-Nazi views. He was very careful about the way he
is
shared
he the
them.
guy that says, when Helmut says in the movie, what do we do? And he says, what we can.
We do what we can. That's right.
Yeah, okay.
So I met his son as well, Otto Berndt Jr., and talked to him about his dad. And he shared this experience. He said after Helmut was released, the Gestapo brought Otto Berndt in and interrogated him for 2 days and just fired questions at him. He said that they would have one Gestapo agent would sit on one side of him, the other would sit on the other, and they would just ping him with questions, and he had to look at them as he answered their question. They would do this to try and rattle them. And for 2 days, they just threw questions. They were sure that he was the one that was behind writing these leaflets. It couldn't have been this teenage
that doesn't
kid.
come across in the movie so much. It's probably one of the things that you had to get rid of for 2
things,
hours. Yeah.
But after 2 days, and what he told his son, and is what his son shared with me, he said that at a certain point, he said the Spirit just took over. And he said, I just answered their questions. I answered honestly, but I wasn't rattled. And after 2 days, they finally said, okay, well, we believe you. No, actually, they said, okay, you can go. And as he stood up to leave, he said, do you finally believe me that I had nothing to do with this? Which he did not. And he said that the Gestapo agent responded, if we had any doubt, you wouldn't be leaving here alive. He said, but remember this, once we have solved the Jewish problem, you Mormons are next.
No, get out of town.
Yeah. Now that was said by a Gestapo agent in Hamburg, Germany. There's not evidence that was a broad Nazi view or anything like that. But it was, it was something that was important enough that man never forgot it.
Wow, that is intense.
So it's interesting to see these ties between Nazi Germany, between the Gestapo and the Mormons and the church, at that time.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. I can't believe my ears. Fortunately, yeah, we got to go. We got to heart out here, man. You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
so
it's been great, dude.
Yeah, the revolution that just started with a radio, and there it is right next to you. Now that's just the one from the prop movie, but I did see it. That is a Bakelite radio.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that I didn't realize that Nazi Germany was manufacturing Bakelite radios. Yeah. That wasn't really big in America until the 50s.
Yeah.
So that
the People's Radio were Bakelite as well.
Yeah, I was about to say that would have been kind of actually technologically advanced for its time, if I'm
Which
not
they were.
mistaken. Yeah, and for those that don't know what bakelite is, it's a type of plastic that was actually, it wouldn't finally dry unless it was put in an oven. And so it's called bakelite because they actually had to bake it. It's almost like clay.
Sounds so domestic.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like your what's it when they put the lump
Like
of dirt?
pottery. Yeah.
Pottery. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. The lump of dirt. Yeah, I'm a communicator, bro. It's the lump of dirt. I meant pottery. So anyway, guys, you have to check out the movie. It is super cool. It's called Truth and Treason. Here's the movie poster that you. I'm sure that's the one that goes up in Germany.
Yes,
right?
it'll be very similar to that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then this one is the one that we're going to be having here in America. It is totally an awesome film. I've seen it myself. The screener was great. The cinematography is gorgeous. The story is inspiring. This actor, holy smoke, man. Talented cat.
Yeah.
He better have a career. He got to be the next Leonardo DiCaprio or something.
I think he's the British Timothy Chalamet. This kid is incredible. Yeah, he's just brilliant.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So anyway, check it out. It's available on Angel Studios streaming, also having a big fat theatrical release, right?
So it'll be released in theaters across the country on October 17th. We encourage people to go out and see it, and go out and see it the first weekend, man. You know how that works.
Yeah, you got to create buzz, baby.
If you get it in there the first weekend, then it'll stay. It's got a chance to have some legs. So.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. So, guys, if you like what you've been hearing so far, make sure you check out Truth and Treason. If you want to contribute to this channel, please if you're a person of means, you want to give us a direct contribution, we can be found on Zelle or on Venmo. We're available on both those platforms. And our very famous and popular War in Heaven veteran hats are available, as well as shirts at wardradio.com. And if you want to contribute to our channel, purchasing equipment for our store, for our studio, you can go to our Amazon wish list. We just recently received another gift from M. Smith. Thank you very much, M. Smith, for hooking us up with another item from the Ward Radio merch store on Amazon.com. It's been real, and it's been fun, and it's been real fun. For this and more, please make sure that you guys check us out at wardradio.com.